Hello everybody and welcome to another ranking video. This time we're going to be looking at all of the Overwatch heroes at the present moment, because this is subject to change and will change probably frequently, although Overwatch 2 is on the horizon, so eventually that will come as well. Although I do assume that all of the heroes in Overwatch will make the transition, but this is, as of current, there are all 32 heroes, if I am not mistaken, that are currently in the game, are on this list. I made that mistake in the Siege video. Not all of the actual people were out yet. So, this one I made sure was an updated list with the correct people in it. So, let me explain a little bit about how I'm going to do the tiers here, just in case you haven't seen a video of mine before about the tier lists. S tier is going to be tippity top, good in all cases. Now, and before we even get into it, this is based on my personal experience as well as, my preferences. So there is going to be a little bit of opinion in here. Well, it's obviously all opinion. Don't worry about that so much. Opinions, though, are going to be very present here. Now, S tier, always good to great. Literally always a case to be made for them being present on your team. A tier, always good. There's always a reason for them to exist, although they aren't always going to be the perfect, counter to certain people. They can get countered occasionally, but are still good overall. B is going to be your average range. They are usually helpful, but there are often times that they are countered, and essentially this can even be a tier of ones that are countered often enough that they'd be placed here. Some of them could be great if the right composition exists, but more often than not it doesn't, so they'll be B tier. C tier is going to be our below average range, where maybe they are not high damage, or like they just don't suit their role very well and they're niche in their uses. D tier is going to be our heroes that I do not personally feel have good use at all, really. There's going to be cases to be made for even any of the ones I would put in D tier. Looking at the list, I don't know who I would put there, but that's to be decided when we get started. I make a point of not, kind of making a pre-list. I kind of want to do it as we go. Let's get started, though. Ana. Ana, the first of our list. I think this is probably alphabetical is why it is how it is. Yes. Ana, a healer, a sniper, an interesting combo. Her bionic, her grenade, is one of the most useful utilities in the game. Although it is kind of hard to execute on. A lot of people just kind of chuck it into the middle of madness, which is actually a pretty good place for it. But if you miss with it, that's a big wasted opportunity. Or if you hit only like one person and not an enemy, and again, kind of a wasted opportunity. But it's a very good ability. Hitting her heals can be difficult, particularly if you're not hitting tanks with them. I am terrible with Ana, though I recognize how good she is. The sleep dart can interrupt ultimate abilities. Incredibly useful. Her her ultimate ability overpowers an ally, can be good for a clutch push or for a clutch defense. So, I'm going to be honest. If this was for me playing as Ana, it would be C tier or even worse. I can't utilize her at all. But knowing how good she is, I think she's got to be at least A tier. And the only reason I don't do S tier for her is because it's hard for her to survive. If she misses her sleep dart, she's going to be hard pressed to escape any scenario in combat. Or, theoretically, she should have support at all times. She should be covered with her teammates. But her inability to escape is going to make her A tier, not quite S tier. And again, these could get revised through the video. Ashe. Now, Ashe is one that I haven't gotten to play with a whole lot. I try to play Mystery Heroes quite a bit, actually, just to see what everyone's kit kind of includes. And it's a fun way to break up the anger and hatred that competitive can fuel in this game. This is one of the games I've gotten the absolute angriest at in competitive play. It just, especially how it was before, where you didn't have to fill specific roles for competitive. Oh man, I'd get so mad if people are like, let's run 4 tanks and 2 DPS, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll play healer again, which is why, well, I'll discuss my main whenever get to them. Ash. Ash is, you know, offensively competent. Her grenade has seen a lot more, or her dynamite, I guess, has seen a lot more use lately. I've been hit with an Ash almost every single game lately, I feel like. And Bob is a great zoning tool and honestly a pretty good killer as well. And she herself, again, if accurate, can be a pretty decent killer. Um, I honestly think that Ash is probably a B tier just because there are other characters in the DPS field that I feel can accomplish greater efficacy, greater usefulness, and greater killing ability. Now, again, Bob is very good, but I hesitate to move her anywhere above that. Baptiste. A Baptiste is an interesting one to me because he doesn't really seem like that much of a healer, but his ability to provide brief invincibility is good for surviving ultimates. You know, his healing is serviceable, but a little difficult to maintain over the course of an entire match. In terms of the healing pool, I would say he's among the bottom tier right now. He can be improved. I think there's a lot of room to make that character more useful, and he can be enjoyable to play. And a good Baptiste can help a team. But I just think there's better choices for healer. I think Baptiste is going to go into the C tier. Our boy Bastion. Now, if I had made this list early in the game's lifespan, this is an easy D tier selection. Bastion, I kind of saw as just a complete troll, and to be honest, he still is a troll, but he has uses, especially when paired with someone that can help either keep him from damage or to help sustain him, like your Reinhardts or, you know, your powerful healers and people that can basically keep him clean from people getting behind him in particular. His ultimate, again, is a killer, an absolute killer. But the fact that he kinda is only good for payload modes, like you can of course find ways to play any hero in the game, but he's best played on payload when he can sit on the payload, or he's best played somewhere where he can, you know, have a perch, and that's not always going to be available to him. So because of that, I think we're gonna have to put him as well in the C tier with Baptiste down here, just because he's not always viable, and there's a lot of other people that can deal crazy fast damage and not have to be stuck in one spot. Um, Brigitte, whatever you would like to call her, I go by Brigitte most of the time. Again, she's another interesting one. I think that as far as in comparison to Baptiste, I think that she is a better choice overall, but I just, again, it comes down to I think there are better people to sustain her role. Her ultimate again is good, rally to me. You know, it probably gets you pumped up and it intimidates you on the other side. It's just loud and it's in your face. But I find more often than not that it doesn't really, the rally doesn't actually provide a whole lot. It can be overcome pretty easily and it can be outlasted even easier. If you have a team that can escape her clutches, she becomes pretty not that useful. Her shield is, you know, it can be useful, and her ability to be a fast shield op. Sorry, I'm using siege terms. A shield hero is kind of interesting to bring a smaller scale shield to the field, but that was a hard sentence to say, by the way. But I think she is better than, I think she's just in the average range. I've seen them be very good and hard to kill, honestly. So the fact that I think she could be used in basically any game, but remains about average, I feel like that's a pretty good place to put her. Doomfist. When playing against a good Doomfist, is incredible at dealing with your, particularly your squishies and immobile units, and even mobile units. If he can catch them and throw them into the air, it's pretty much curtains. Now he can be countered pretty heavily by a bunch of different heroes, but I think just his overall offensive output, his lack of range is a little bit upsetting. So if you have characters that can hit him from a certain range, it's going to be hard to make a Doomfist play happen. But his excellent mobility mixed with his high damage output and if you're continually damaging, he's also hard to kill up close as well. If he's got you in the air, you're going to have a hard time killing him because he's just going to bash you, get his health back, things of that nature. I think he's always playable. I think Doomfist goes into my A tier. Um, D.Va. Now, D.Va is one of my absolute favorite characters in the game. She has the ability to soak up damage for her team. She has the ability to negate damage, and she can soak up quite a bit of it with her mech. And her damage up far obviously isn't going to get the job done, but it's constant. You don't ever have to let off if you don't want to. Her rockets are a good zoning tool. Her ability to she can cancel ultimates. She can fly. She can be very mobile, very quick. And even outside of her mech, I guess I should also be discussing ultimates for all of these people. Doomfist is about at the start of the ones I missed. Doomfist, his ability to like crack down on a big area, especially when comboed with someone that can slow people or that can keep them in one area. It can be a game changer for a final push or something like that, or to stop momentum from squeezing you in. A good zoning tool, if nothing else. Going back to D.Va though, get her outside of her mech and she's still potent. If she's fighting someone that isn't a tank or someone that kills very quickly, she has a pretty decent chance of, if you're hitting your shots with her, of doing significant damage as the tiny D.Va, as baby D.Va. She has high damage and she gets her mech back pretty quickly. Her ultimate, when used again in conjunction with a lot of other alts, can be a team wiper. It can take out an entire squad, tanks included. I can't tell you how many times I've been Roadhog and think, oh, I'll sustain this. This won't kill me. Boom, I'm dead, just like that. D.Va works very quickly, and up close with her machine guns, she's pretty high damage. I've gotten a lot of gold medals in damage with her, and that's with players that are competent in the DPS department. I think that D.Va has to be our first S tier hero. There is virtually no downside to her kit. She doesn't necessarily have high range, but she can get places so quickly that her range is basically meaningless. If you gave her range, she would be the most overpowered unit in the game. Echo. Echo, as far as mobile heroes go, it's interesting to have a character that can mimic others. Now, is it perfect? I don't. I think there's a lot of scenarios where they're playing a set of heroes where you wouldn't want to take over one of their people, because either their ultimate isn't going to be particularly good as a one use, or just the character won't be that good that she can become. Her offense on her own as Echo is pretty solid. Particularly her stickies. If they stick to people, especially your squishier units, she's gonna absolutely demolish them. And a lot of people still, even to this day, aren't prepared when they fight her. They think, oh, she's a squishy. I'm going to take her out quickly. And maybe you will, but she might land just enough on you that you're going to go down with her. And again, the mobility mixed with an interesting and unique ultimate, I think, lands her in the average range. I don't think she's, going to be up in this upper echelon, but I also don't think she's below average in any way. I think she's a very interesting. Genji, in my estimation, one of the most difficult heroes to execute properly. I've tried time and time again to execute what he does and try to actually play as him. He has one of the most unique play styles. Although people can play him a variety of ways, I've seen it. Trust me. A lot of times it does not work. A lot of times they're on my team. You probably had that experience. But Genji has the ability to deflect. He has the ability to dash through the air, to double jump passively, basically, and to have a very powerful ultimate ability. But he is very vulnerable while he's doing it. He only has the ability to deflect one time, essentially, during his ultimate. And yeah, every kill it resets his dash, and he's very mobile. And a good Genji is a very scary thing indeed, and very frustrating to try and take down because he's very mobile. If it's a good one, he's going to utilize dashes, jumps, and deflections. I think that Genji gets into the A tier just based on how high of a skill ceiling can make his character good. If you meet that ceiling or if you even attempt to exceed it, you're going to be a very hard to counter player. There are characters to counter him, like your Winstons and things like that, that don't care about his deflections. You know, projectile people that can shoot at his feet with a wide area of effect. You're going to be able to counter a Genji. But the fact of the matter is, his kit is good. His up close damage is actually pretty solid. If he's unnoticed, he can throw the 3 shurikens at once, and it's very, very high damage. You don't want to mess with a Genji. You don't want to leave one unattended, at least. Hammond. I struggle with this one because he can be a good zoning tool. He can clear a point very quickly with his ultimate. He's very, very, very frustrating to deal with as well. He's hard to kill. He's a good staller. He's good at kind of just rotating a point until his team can show up to assist. But as far as everything else goes, I don't really think he's that good of a hero. And even though you see him almost constantly, I just feel like he's got to be our first entry into the D tier just because I don't think his kit supports good style of play. I don't think a character built entirely around the premise of stalling is a good character concept. Now, I've seen a lot of good plays with him, and his zoning ability with his clearing area is good. But overall, I do not think that Hammond is well suited for competitive play. If you're playing against people that know what they're doing, they're not going to let him rotate that point very long once they get a team wipe. Hanzo. He has seen a lot of changes actually with how he functions. I see the use of him, and again, his ultimate can be a team killer, especially if you combo it with some of the ultimates on the list. I see you, Zarya. But again, Zarya's ult makes a lot of people's ults better. Mei's ultimate makes a lot of people's ults more effective. It makes them seem better than they are, and I think Hanzo is a big example of that. His ultimate is best used whenever you have people in a narrow line or in a very tight area. His kit on its own, he's a good picker. He can pick off people, but he's also susceptible to being picked off. So I feel as though that's going to put Hanzo at a little bit of a disadvantage here. I'm going to put him in the below average tier. You have to be very accurate to hit shots, and even still, there's a lot of very mobile people in Overwatch that's going to make his job hard. You'll see him get a lot of play of the games, and you might think, oh, well, that means he's going to be the best damage dealer ever. Maybe, but that might just mean that they hit one lucky streak in a match, and maybe that is what it takes to win that match. But you don't want to rely on hot streaks. You want to rely on liability. I don't think Hanzo can provide that. Junkrat. My opinion of him has actually risen a bit recently. He can get his ultimate, maybe the fastest out of anyone. You see those freaking rip tires. It seems like every 2 seconds he's got a rip tire. Or fire in a hole! Like it's a constant barrage of explosives and traps and everything else. The worst feeling in the world is stepping in that trap. You're chasing someone down, you're about to take them out, and you're gonna help your team make that big push for the payload or that big push for the point, and clunk, you're in a trap, and then here he comes around the corner, mine in his hand, chucks it, shoots, pow, bang. They're just the worst feeling in the world. Whenever you hear that clank, you know he's coming. You know he's gonna take you down. My opinion has increased on him quite a bit. And just because of the efficiency at which you can get that tire, the efficiency of his damage output. Now, I honestly, I'm going to put him in B, and here's why. I was very high on him just a second ago, so you're wondering how I could possibly drag him down. He cannot hack certain units, hardly at all. Your Pharahs, your people that fly, your highly mobile people, he's going to have a hard time dealing with unless he traps them. Now, he's really not going to have much luck trapping a Pharah for the most part unless she's, on the ground a lot, which you will see happen. Some of your tanks and things aren't going to be that affected by his traps, but his rip tire again is very good, and I think it deserves a lot of respect. But his inability to target certain units, I think, is going to lower him down the list a little bit, just because he's always usable, but there are certain scenarios where he's not really that usable. So next on our list, Lucio. perhaps the character I have played the absolute most of in Overwatch, my main, so to speak. If we are in need of a healer, I will play him almost every single time, with the only exception being perhaps a Zenyatta or very rarely a Mercy. I don't ever see myself playing any healers besides them. A, because I don't have experience with them, but B, let's be honest, they're just kind of the best three healers. There's other options and there's niche scenarios where the others are good, but I just don't see it being that good. Lucio, though, his ability to heal people from a proximity, extremely powerful. His ability to give speed boosts and to amplify either or according to the team's needs. He's great at escaping. He has some of the best mobility kit in the whole game. He can wall run. He can get out of scenarios where you've tossed him over an edge. His damage output is kind of a weakening factor, but his ability to get environmental kills more than makes up for it. And you don't always need him to do damage output. That's, obviously you don't need him ever to do damage output, but getting those kills off of like roadhogs, oh, the best feeling in the world is a roadhog trying to get picks into like the well on Ilios, and you just boop him into the well. Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. His ultimate as well. Great for surviving your diva, your bunny bombs. Great for surviving your sudden high damage output ordeals. Great for surviving getting chucked into the freaking Zarya black hole of death. There's so many cases that his ultimate is great. There's so many cases where a speed boost in the absence of an ult can help people escape. He can help you get to the point. He can get to the point very quickly himself. Lucio is an easy S tier selection for me. I don't see any reason at all that you would take him anywhere below S tier. McCree. As far as your single shot heroes go, I think McCree is perhaps the most powerful of all of them. His high damage, his incredibly high crit damage, mixed with a great stun ability that can knock people out of ultimates. It can slow people down. If he stuns a middle range to low range health unit, he will take them out right there on the spot. It's over. He'll fan the hammer and you'll be done. His ability to roll and effectively avoid that, rolling is his only escape. You don't necessarily want to always be in the face of your opponents. But he is great. He's a great tank melter. He's a great squishy killer. He's good overall, and his ultimate ability great for zoning, great for, again, if you can catch people with your Mei alts and your Zarya alts, things of that nature. Good for picking off people that are flying in the sky. He's one of the best Pharah counters if you can hit your shots, which is up for debate when you're speaking about me, but McCree's I think are very powerful, and I think McCree belongs in the A tier. Mei. Now, despite the fact that I've been using her as an example of making all of these people's ultimates better, I do not think that she is the absolute top tier of heroes. Again, I think she has very good situational abilities. And there's a lot of scenarios where she's great for defense, and a good Mei can frustrate you beyond belief. She can put up a wall to separate your people so that you can get easy picks. She can freeze the people that have been dealing a lot of damage, that have been your problem makers. She can virtually stun lock certain tanks like your divas and your roadhogs and people like that. She can almost just perpetually trap them. And her ability to self-heal, use her wall for escape capabilities, and her ultimate being as powerful as it is, I think is going to put her at least in B tier. She's in a very, very tough middle ground for me between A and B tier. For now, I'm going to put her in B, just looking at who she's with. I think it's fair, but I'm very torn between A and B tier. I may revisit her by the end of the video. Mercy. Again, just an incredibly powerful hero. Now, you might say, yeah, but she's nowhere near as good as she used to be when she could resurrect all dead allies within a pretty good proximity. Maybe you could debate that, but her ultimate is still very powerful. Yeah, there was a brief period where she was so powerful she didn't even heal in her ult. She would just become a battle mercy and just freaking pew 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 from the sky. She's very hard to kill in her ultimate form, and she's very hard to kill even in basic form if you know how to play her and bounce between people. But there's a decent skill ceiling, actually. People think she's easy to play. She's easy to play, but she's hard to master because evasion is important. Because on her own, she has no evasiveness, and on her own, her offensive capabilities, while she's comparable to, say, a mechless diva, she doesn't have the ability to get her safety net back like a diva does, and she doesn't have the ability really to take out tanks or anything of that nature. You can only really defend herself against your squishies. But that being said, her heal is substantial, probably the most powerful heal in the whole game, and her ultimate ability is strong enough that, in my estimation, and I haven't even mentioned the damage boost mechanic, I think Mercy's very powerful. I think she deserves to be in the S tier with Lucio and Diva as well, despite the fact that my personal skill with her is way lower than these other two. Moira. Moira has grown on me a bit. At first, I was like, it's going to be really hard to control the healing orb and the damage orb. It's going to be really hard to control them in your, certain maps with open areas, and to an extent, that's true. But in your corridors and your buildings and your tight spaces and your cramped spaces, she's going to be a very good person to use. She's got good healing ability if done right. She has decent damage ability, better than any of these other healers I've talked about. And her ultimate ability, again, a good zoner, a good healer on top of... You want to get everyone you can in a line, both good and bad, which is hard to do. So her ultimate isn't always a home run hitter, but I think she still is deserving of A tier. And I know it's pretty heavy healers up here, but healers are arguably the most important role in the game. So if they can fulfill their role, they're going to go high up on my list. Orisa. She is another that, at the time of her release, was very, very powerful and still is quite powerful and has a lot of uses in meta. She, interestingly, I feel like her... I don't know this for sure, but I feel like her, her orb that goes out and pulls people to it, I feel like that used to be more potent than it is. I found myself a lot of times with that not having the range I felt like it used to have. But I don't know for sure if that's something that occurred or not. Her shield is very good when comboed with other shields. It can be downright frustrating to try and break through to actually target people. Another one that tries to make this Bastion man here more suitable. Her ultimate ability when comboed with shield to protect it, giving everyone that big buff is good. Although I find that people, when they see it happening, they'll back off, or they'll have someone with a ready-to-use ultimate like a Tracer get in there, drop a pulse bomb, and get out. So I think that Orisa is going to find herself in the B tier just because sometimes she's not really that viable, especially on maps that don't have a payload. And, neutral capture zones aren't going to be her strongest suit, although maps like Ilios and things where there's a well and where there's easy places to drop people off edges, she can be more sustainable in those. But I feel like with her slow projectile speed and things of that nature, I think she fits nicely into the B tier. Always usable, but not always great. Pharah. Again, there's some maps where she's not going to be as effective. They don't have the verticality. There's going to be your people that are going to counter her. So if she's countered, she's the type of hero that you're going to want to switch off of immediately. If you have a good soldier on the field, if you have a good McCree on the field, people that are going to focus you down every time you take the skies, she's one that you're going to want to switch off of. And because of that, I think she's not going to be in your S tier. But here's what she does have going for her. She has good damage. She has the ability to knock people off the edge. She has an ultimate ability that is very damaging and doesn't just focus one spot, but it doesn't have a long duration. So you probably want to focus it on a spot instead of spray and pray methodology. Her damage, and if she's paired with a Mercy, the Pharmacy strat, if you pair them together, they're very powerful, and there's a lot of cases to be made that she stretches the field enough to help your team push. But again, the fact that she has so many counters and things of that nature, I think fitting her into this B tier is a pretty fair place to be. Reaper. Reaper is another hero that He wants to be up close and personal, and when he does, he's very hard to kill in a one-on-one situation, particularly against a tank, because he's just going to keep healing as he's ripping through your health. It used to be he healed off of kills, which I don't know if I like or dislike that change, but I think it's for the better, because people were just basically making it to where they would bodyguard whenever he would get kills. They would be like, no, you can't have that. Things like that nature. He does have a lot of counters, but he has good escape, and he can also clear a point faster than almost anyone with his Death Blossom. A little edgy for my tastes, though, to be fair. But I think that Reaper is probably also going to fit into this B tier range. I know we're starting to get pretty heavy in that middle area, but I think he fits pretty nicely into there. You know, there's a lot of scenarios where he's not that viable. You know, your unit, if you're against a team that plays pretty spread out by default, his ultimate's going to be hampered a lot. If you're playing a team with a lot of very mobile people and not incredibly tanky tanks, he's not going to be as effective there either. So I think B tier is completely fair for your Reapers. Reinhardt, as far as tanks go, one of the most interesting, has virtually no damage beyond up close and personal unless you really are accurate with that hammer toss, or the, you know, whatever it's called, his ability to toss out a strike, basically. His ultimate is very strong. A good Reinhardt can really keep a team's momentum going. It can also help fuel a push. He charges in, uses his ultimate, you know, backs people off. You don't want to be up close and personal with a Reinhardt, in which that's kind of where you need to be to deal with him. So I do think that makes him very powerful. He makes a lot of units that would otherwise be weakened way more powerful. So I think his ability to do that, mixed with his ability to provide support and not be killed easily, I think puts him into the A tier. I think he is a step above a lot of these units here. Roadhog. Now, Roadhog is my second favorite tank, but maybe like my third favorite hero overall. I enjoy tanks and healers a lot in this game. It doesn't mean I don't like DPS. In fact, I love DP. What has happened? Bring me back to this. Excuse me. Anywho, despite the interruption there, where did all of our Hammond, go back to where you belong, sir. You are not. He's trying to be quite the hamster and escape my grasp. I don't support this. Roadhog. Back to Roadhog, please, and thank you. His ability to self-heal to an incredible extent and deal very good damage. I know he was recently nerfed, and you know, you can feel it. You can definitely feel it when you use him. But I think his ability to get environmental kills with the best of them, if not the best of them, mixed with his overall decent damage as it is, decent range, particularly for a tank, and just overall his ability to stay alive and still deal damage, I think is going to put him amongst our top rated tanks. Thus far, we have no S tier DPS members, but I think that's subject to change, so don't worry. Sigma. One of the characters I'm absolutely the least knowledgeable of, so my placement of him might seem unfair, but I do know how he works, and his basic attack I don't think is very good at all. But his ability to throw projectiles, his big boulder essentially that he knocks people back and stuns them briefly, can have good uses. I think it's hard to land hits with, so I think it's kind of niche. His ability to absorb hits and gain shield is good for survivability and kind of like helping your squishies escape a sticky situation is good. And his ultimate can also be good, but I'm going to be honest, at the present moment, I'm going to put him in C tier. I won't go D tier just because I don't have a full education as to how he works, how he's played. So I'm going to put him in the C tier. I feel as though I see a lot of Sigmas, but I don't see them have a huge impact a lot of the time. So maybe he just has a really high skill ceiling, but I just don't think he's as applicable as some of our other tanks on the list. Soldier 76, Call of Duty man himself. His DPS is very good. His range is very good. His ability to sprint, Call of Duty man. is very strong. His ability, ultimate ability, if not countered by your divas and people that can avoid and shield and things of that nature, is very strong as well, especially if you catch people off guard. You can take out the healers and maybe even some DPS with it before they catch on to what you're doing. I think his high damage output mixed with his ability to heal and provide even just the smallest amount of support on top of everything else he does well, I think it's going to land him in the S tier very easily. Sombra, another character that has undergone a lot of changes, particularly in her invisibility. It's permanent now unless you get hit or decide to come out of it. So I think that alone makes it to where she's very sneaky, and if you're playing a Sombra, you know she's going to be sneaking around somewhere. So it gives you another body to be on the lookout for, or another scenario to keep in your head. So she's good for that. But one problem I do have with her is while she's busy sneaking around, she's not helping to make the push happen. So it's going to be a 5-on-6 virtually any time that there's a push going on. Now, obviously, neutralizing an important health pad for the enemy and making it a great health pad for your team is always going to be a good benefit. And her EMP is incredibly powerful for pushes and things like that to lock people in place. If she can get a good EMP off and stun the entire team, essentially, that's going to be a team wipe. A great Sombra is great, but that's to be said for any of the characters on this list. So I do think that she has good use, and I think the EMP is very, very powerful. One of the best ultimates in the game. But the fact that she finds herself not being on the field as often as basically any other hero, I think it's going to land her in the B tier. I considered C tier, but I don't think she's quite at that level, so I won't move her to there. Symmetra, another character with a lot of changes that have gone on. Her turrets being able to get basically launched to wherever you need is a good thing for her. Her teleporter being way, way different now. Kind of just like a bridge gapper to get you places a little more quickly or get you out of trouble a little more quickly. Her ultimate exists. I don't see it as being particularly strong. Her offensive kit on its own again exists, isn't that strong. I do not think that a Symmetra is particularly powerful. I'm going to honestly, I think I'm going to put her down here with our Hammond. I just don't think that her kit is useful in most scenarios at all. Particularly in competitive play, she can be countered in so many means, and if you're paying close enough attention, you can avoid the scariest part of her, which is her turrets in close proximity to one another. So I'll put her down way there for now. Torbjorn. This man, with his ability to be Angry Boy very often and get pretty powerful when he does it, is a good thing. And his candy corn, as I like to call it, because that's what it sounds like he's saying when he's doing his molten core. Candy corn! He does it, shoots out all the stuff, and it's actually kind of a decent killer. His turret, very frustrating to deal with for your Pharahs and people that are separated from the crowd but are also squishy. It's going to target you, it's going to melt you, and any damage anyone else does to you is going to end your life. And it also tips people off that you're in the proximity. So it's hard to be sneaky when a Torbjorn exists. So because of this, and mixed with his, he's been buffed a little bit in the recent times, I think that the B tier is fair for him. It hurts me, but I'm gonna have to put him in C tier just because, despite all the things I said, his turret's pretty easy to deal with. So once you've dealt with it, yes, he can rebuild it, and he can even repair the ones that aren't destroyed yet, or the one that isn't destroyed yet. I still just think that his molten core is easy enough to avoid in most scenarios that I just don't think he's going to usually be the right choice. Again, he has all of these characters in this row have times when you can use them, and you can use them very effectively. Even Symmetra and Hammond do as well, but it's on the more rare side, and it's on the less frequent and more counterable side as well. Tracer, one of your absolutely most mobile units and hardest to hit units if they're played with a very fast hit and run approach. Ultimate ability, great if you can land it. If it doesn't land, it's not going to do like a home run hit amount of damage. That's great for nuking down an annoying tank or sticking to, say, the back of a Reinhardt who's like, oh, where is it? And then it ends up cluster affecting a bunch of teammates that were in its proximity. It's hard to deal with a good Tracer because there's not a lot of people that can reliably hit her in a close range like that. So she's great for diverting attention. She's great for getting places quickly. She's great for nuking down tanks or even DPS and healers. I think that Tracer is going to get put in the S tier. This is going to be one of my heaviest S tier ranking lists, by the way, because I think there's a lot of characters in Overwatch that are very strong. So I think they deserve to have that kind of access. Widowmaker, a sniper. That's all you need to know, really. She scopes in, gets more powerful the longer she's scoped in. Her mine exists. A good Widowmaker can help kill push after push and can even help facilitate a push if she gets a good pick. But I just do not think that the typical Widow, particularly in your competitive, is not going to provide that much use to you. I think I'm going to put her in the Hanzo tier here. I don't think snipers are incredibly viable in this game with the exception of Ana, and she's kind of a fringe exception at that. So I just do not think that snipers are going to particularly boost your team's chances when other characters can serve her purposes in a better way, in my opinion. Winston, among the tanks, is one of my least favorite, but he is quite useful. His electricity counters a lot of people that are otherwise not super counterable. Your tracers, your people that are just basically hard to hit, like your Reinhardt, so he can go straight through the shield. Anyone with shields, he just ignores them. So he's great for countering those people, but someone like a Reaper or somebody like a Roadhog can counter him pretty hard, pretty quickly. Even Tracer, who he does do pretty well against, she also can avoid him pretty easily and can deal quite fast damage to him. So as far as tanks go, I'm going to have to put him in this C tier as well. Despite how heavy the S tier is, this is going to be a slightly more bottom heavy list, although not by much looking at the two people that are left. We have Zarya here, who is... She doesn't have to be the best, but the fact of the matter is when she puts out shields, people shoot them. It just happens that way. I shoot them a lot. I am victim to it a lot. I am one of the people to blame a lot of the times for buffing Zarya into the stratosphere. And then if she has her ultimate ability, she can make basically anyone's ult in the game that much better. And the fact of the matter is, if you do contribute to her becoming overpowered, then she's just going to absolutely melt you. And you're not going to want to be anywhere near her. And it makes it so hard to take out anyone off of the field, especially the frontline people who you're going to want to target. She's going to put that shield on right as you're about to do the killing blow. And you're just going to feed her all of that. And they're going to get healed. And they're going to continue their rotations. And they're going to decimate you. Zarya is S tier, and there's no other way of debating it. She is virtually always seen now in competitive play, and she's terrifying. You don't want to run into a Zarya. Now, I don't have a standard bell curve distribution here, and I'm sorry about that. It kind of follows it until you get to your S tier here, which I think these are all absolutely top tier, overpowered, not overpowered necessarily, but just incredibly powerful units here. Zenyatta. Zenyatta is an interesting one for me because he's probably the highest damage dealing healer. But his healing in and of itself isn't all that powerful. It's really just good for keeping your weaker units alive. Your tanks, for the most part, are going to be handled by your other healers, most likely. Although if they're low enough, you can toss an orb on them and help them kind of sustain long enough for the other healers to get back or to help. His Transcendence. It makes people invincible within its proximity. It basically makes you immune to other ultimates. It's a great one. It cannot be countered either. You cannot knock into Zenyatta out of his ultimate. But he has no escape ability. And again, his basic healing is not all that powerful. Now he does self-heal himself after a while, and his damage output is great. So having said that, I cannot put him in S tier, but I think A tier is very respectable for your Zenyatas out there. So Here is my list. I think all of the current heroes are included here. I made sure that there was 32, and whenever I looked, there was 32. So this should be everyone with the exception of someone that may have dropped within the last week or something. Who knows? It happens pretty often. Um, so looking back through the list, starting from the bottom, as I like to do, our Hammond and our Symmetra. I don't think either of them get to move up. I think they both are typically not particularly useful. I think Hammond does see a lot of play even in competitive. But having said that, I think a good team is going to find a way to deal with the Hammond very quickly, and because of the fact that he's kind of built to stall, I just don't think that that's a good reason for a character to exist. So I think Hammond's going to go into our D tier, and Symmetra's going to stay right there with him. Our C tier, we have Baptiste, Bastion, Hanzo, Sigma, Torbjorn, Widowmaker, and Winston. I think all of these are fair, and a lot of these are just because they all can be useful, and they all do have scenarios where they're the MVP, more or less. But typically, there will be better options to fulfill all of their roles, and almost all of them have some kind of flaw that I described when I was putting them where they are. So I think that all of them are fair. I don't see anyone that deserves to be relegated, and I don't think I see anyone that deserves to be promoted. The only one that, in my eyes, I could theoretically move up from here is Torbjorn, I think. Or maybe even Sigma. But I just don't think that at the present moment I can do it. I think that this is a fair rating, no changes in D or C tiers. B tier, we have Ashe, we have Brigitte, we have Echo, we have Junkrat, we have Mei, Orisa, Pharah, Reaper, and Sombra. This is your tier where they are essentially always playable, and most of them have very, very powerful uses, ultimates, things like that. But they just aren't quite tippity top tier. Some of them have pretty hard counters. Some of them aren't always helpful for team based mechanics and pushing. Some of them don't have the range or abilities that others have. There's at least one minor flaw that will apply to most of these that I just don't think will quite elevate them or de-elevate them to a lower level. Again, I'm pretty happy with the B tier. People that I would consider promoting would include your Mays, your Orissas, and perhaps like your Reapers. Those are the only ones that I could see maybe getting better here. I don't think anyone is deserving of moving down except maybe Brigitte, in my opinion. I could see in the C tier here. But I think the B tier is pretty fair as well. The bell curve came back a little bit, although S and A are tied, so it happens. A tier: Ana, Doomfist, Genji, McCree, Moira. I don't know why her name slipped my mind for a second there. Reinhardt and Zenyatta. This tier is our always good, always useful, does have counters, yes, but I think every hero in the game has a counter in some way, shape, or form. It's just whether or not you can typically overcome them and whether or not it's worth it to play when there's a counter on the field. I think all of these are worth playing when there's a counter on the field. Although you will see some of these people switch if they are being hard countered, you will see them switch, but they don't always have to. Many times they can just change how they're playing that character. That's another sign of a good character, if it can be played a different style and still provide good use to the team. I think all of these are examples of that. I don't think anyone Zenyatta is very good, but I cannot put him up there because his inability to escape mixed with his low healing output. Reinhardt, I don't see moving either direction. Moira, I don't see moving either direction. McCree, again, is pretty locked into here. I could maybe see him falling down a peg, but and the same goes for Doomfist and Genji. I could see them on a slightly lower pedestal, but I can't see any of the three of these DPSs in the S tier. Sure. Ana. A great Ana, I could see in the S tier. A bad Ana, I could see in the B or even below. She has a very high variance. But because of how effective she would be with the average good player, that's a strange way of putting that, but your average player who is above average, more or less, is going to use her very well and is going to make her always viable, always useful always a good source of healing output. Everyone here is fair in my opinion as well. I think this is going to be my first list where I haven't changed anything post-mortem. S tier, we have Diva, we have Lucio, Mercy, Roadhog, Soldier 76, Tracer, and Zarya. So, pretty tank heavy, but really not that much more than anything else. We have 2 DPS, 2 healing, and 3 tanks. If it was a 7-player game, this team right here would be top tier. You wouldn't want to mess with this team. Now, honestly, this would be a pretty good team comp. I kind of want to look at all of these and see how they would structure as a team comp, but and pick maybe one that we would remove. But just looking at it, I don't think anyone here is at all deserving of relegation. These are all your tippy top tier people in my estimation. Now, again, I'm a filthy Xbox peasant. I know. Feel free to turn off the video at this point. You've watched enough of it. It's going to help me a lot. But before you go, please leave a like and comment your favorite heroes down below. But having said that, on Xbox, these heroes are very good, and they're, all of this I think still applies to PC. I've watched the Overwatch League quite a bit. I've watched the higher tier players play the game and saw their perspectives as well. Some of these people are going to be moved up and down on their lists, obviously, because they're the pros. They're the best of the best. But some of these niche characters maybe find a better suit on an actual professional team. But in my estimation, this is my tier list for Overwatch characters. Again, leave a like, comment down below your favorite Overwatch heroes, and tell me whose ultimate ability you think is the absolute best. That's what I'm interested in hearing. Who do you think has the best ultimate, and who is your favorite hero? Also, let me know what other tier lists you would like to see in the future. But for now, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. See ya!